Do we?
No? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
maybe
feel
it's
like
because
it.
we're still like, yeah?
Maybe not.
I don't know. It's because it's new now that it's more elevated.
Hasn't it been like this for 3 days?
Yeah, but it's just today we're noticing it.
Yeah. Maybe I feel like emotionally really big.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm projecting that.
Okay. Okay. I like it.
You do?
Now, of course, I see it too, but I probably wouldn't have if you hadn't said anything.
No.
I wonder how the plant's looking to everyone. I watered it today.
It looks happy. I think it's staging a major comeback.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sweet. It's spring.
Just remember that things have to grow down before they can grow up. So just because nothing's happening on the outside doesn't mean nothing's
true.
happening.
It's like bamboo. Okay. Okay. I'll go with that. My tactic is just I'm going to water the shit out of it.
Yeah.
You give it so much, it's not going to know what hit it.
That sounds a little threatening, but
I end up drowning it.
I heard you listening to Pod Save America, which I was surprised by.
Really?
I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised by the news or whatever, but the specific choice of that, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
So yeah, I went down a news hole.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of. My tactic was I started off with like funny news. So I'm easing myself into it. But I decided that I have zero justification and reason to not know what's going on. And I'm kind of tired of this story I have that like, I don't know, other people do. I'm on the outside of things. When it's something that I am continuously doing. That like the only reason why I can't talk about these things and know about these things is because I'm not doing the things that people who talk about them are doing. That's it. So I'm going to go into social media and news, and I'm going to deal with the feelings that those things bring up because, hey, that's the cost of knowing. And also maybe I need to strengthen my stress muscles, you know? Maybe they're just really delicate right now, and I want to get stronger with that. So anyway,
cool.
I started off with like doing like funny news because a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Did you just make that up? That's genius.
Okay. You're such a good actor. So I started off with Seth Meyers and Trevor Noah, who are both doing their news from their like.
I can't watch Trevor Noah anymore because he's too attractive.
He's so beautiful.
I can't.
Oh God, there was this one interview with him and Bill Gates. Have you seen that?
No, I told you I can't fucking deal with it.
You can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fine.
You can't deal with the news.
Oh, this is the other thing that I was like, what's going on? He's doing this interview with Bill Gates, and Bill Gates, it looks like he's in a masterclass studio.
Really?
Like, and I mean, like, you know, the platform, like, masterclass. He has, like, it's like a soft focus in the back.
I mean, he's a computer guy, so maybe...
I was like, he must be at home. And does he just have this, like, really amazing setup in his own home?
He's Bill Gates.
I guess so.
He probably has a whole setup room from where he does interviews.
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
I want that.
We basically have it.
No, but can we have, like, on, like, a next level? So there's always, like, you know how you go to a set, and if the set's, like, if the soundstage shares like different sets, they'll be like, oh, here's like the hospital section.
Yeah.
This is probably just for one show. There's like, here's the hospital section. Here's like the courtroom section or whatever. It'd be cool if like we had our own. We literally had sets in this house.
That would be really cool.
Really fun. Even if they would make
you want to live in a model house, basically.
Basically.
Yeah.
I want to live at Disneyland.
That's
without all the Disney.
Without all the Disney. You want to live with the Bluths. That was like a really funny aspect of there. I know it's like very foundational and basic and gets set up in literally the first episode, but it's very funny. And it just like keeps on giving the fact that the house is like not a real house. It's fantastic.
So perfectly representational of
so
them
good.
as a family. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like lifting up the turkey. Yeah, it's great. It's just great. So you listen to Seth Meyers and Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, who I'd actually forgotten that I had seen his TED Talk about this. He predicted this happening.
Predicted what?
Like this pandemic, all of this, in a TED Talk.
Hasn't everyone?
I mean, a lot of people have talked about it, but
like, aren't there movies?
I'm just
about
going
this?
off this interview.
Uh-huh.
That like not that long ago, he was like, "This is gonna happen, and we should do something about this."
Yeah.
And now people are like, "So Bill Gates." So people have like conspiracy theories that like some people literally have conspiracy theories that Bill Gates caused this just to look right.
That's funny.
Yeah.
If anyone could afford it, I don't. Actually, this is very inexpensive.
Yeah.
Tactic. Yeah, the virus does all the work. You just are like
genius.
Go forth.
Go forth, my pretties.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I watched John Oliver. Classic. And then my next move was to put on Pod Save America. I don't know that I'm like getting myself into the heavy duty news waters.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a whole other thing to navigate that I'm not attuned with. Because I feel like all the news stations know about all the other news stations. There's this like network of news that you have to know. Maybe I'm wrong about this. But it kind of seems to me like you can't just watch one news source. Is that true? Because it'll be skewed towards one point of view.
Yes and no.
And you won't really know whatever
people act like this
because people talk about like other news anchors and this one.
People act like this is a both sides thing. I am not of that opinion. Yes, there is an obviously liberal leaning news network, and yes, there is an obvious conservative leaning news network.
Well, I thought you don't. Okay.
I mean, I can.
No,
they're not secrets.
I was just wondering if you were like intentionally making them anonymous. Okay. Yes. Okay.
So it's kind of a straw man thing, like because Fox. There you are. Is a seriously fucked up place and actually does not deal in factual information. Like they've done a different thing. They're doing a different thing. While MSNBC is still concerned with what actually happened.
Yeah.
Like Fox is not concerned with that really.
Like its own.
It's extremely strange.
It's not a reality show. I don't know how.
That you're right. They've taken the news format and have made it into like a sort of a different genre that still looks like news and still quacks like news, but is not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a shit show, frankly. It really is. And the fact that people think it's actual news is really dangerous, in my opinion.
And that's one of the things that a lot of people were talking about from my research today. It's like the danger of misinformation, especially dealing with this. It's like we cannot afford to have that in the atmosphere because you don't know where that's getting passed down to.
And how people are interpreting it.
Exactly.
Literally, a lot of people wanted to and have been trying to stop the different news outlets from airing the Trump everyday like live briefing, which you always air
Yeah.
the president's
like-
addresses or whatever.
Right.
And some people are like, we need to stop doing that because he's saying too many things that are confusing the issue
Right.
and that are not true.
Yeah. And even for the people who know it isn't true, or where it seems obvious that that can't be true, there's going to be one person who's, I don't know, just going to like spew that out somewhere else.
Well, fucking DeSantis just claimed that he found out yesterday or 2
I
days
know,
ago,
yes. He's like, oh, apparently some people don't get symptoms.
and they can still pass it on.
Or he's not. And in which case he's just lying and covering his tracks.
Yeah,
In
you're
a very
choosing.
stupid way. I don't know in what situation it's better off that you look moronic and irresponsible.
I don't know what their plan is. I really don't. Because it's a little bit like a house of cards. You can be like, oh yeah, we're the greatest. Yeah, no, this is definitely the greatest. And they keep building this like object and convincing you it's a real building.
Right.
But like, it's a virus. It's not going to comply with your narrative.
Yeah. It's not like if we frame this really well.
Which is what he's been doing this whole time. Is like he's just telling a good story or a compelling story or the story that he believes that people want to hear on the right or whatever. And just the fact that he's saying it is making it true. Like him being like, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion. And people actually end up believing no collusion. But because there's this other thing that like, if you repeat something enough, even if you know it's not true, you still start to doubt it.
Yeah.
Like there are rumors and some, I don't know, I can't remember where I was hearing people talk about this. Like the Richard Gere gerbil rumor.
Oh my god. Oh.
Like everyone, I think pretty
It's
much
like-
everyone knows it's not true.
It's
But
like
there's a
thought
little part of you.
pollution.
It is. There's a little part of you that's like, oh, isn't that guy that
Yeah.
he's like tainted by the gerbil thing for eternity because it was repeated so much. So even if something is patently untrue,
Yeah.
you cannot block you cannot if it's repeated.
Right.
That is extremely terrifying. And I personally think that this is what the crooked Hillary thing is. Like the people that hate Hillary Clinton, half of them, 90% of them, I'm willing to say, have no idea why.
Of course they don't.
They have no idea. And they call her like corrupt and crooked, left, right, and center. They have no idea what they're talking about.
So most people get their thoughts from other people's thoughts.
Yes.
Like 100%. And I don't understand why other people don't see this. Like they think their thoughts are their own, but it's like, no, someone else told you that. And then you were like, oh, that makes sense or whatever. It like resonated with you. It fit in with your worldview. And then you took it for your own and you spewed it somewhere else.
In that somewhere, though, there is the distinction between actual occurrences and interpretations of the occurrences. So, like that, the way that you said it just now makes it seem like everything weighs the same, almost.
Okay.
And somebody telling you, "Hey, there's a truck overturned on Fig" or whatever, is different from them being like, "I think Hillary's stupid." Like those two things are not like. One of them has more weight almost because it's like they have different densities or something. There's something different about those two things.
Okay. Do you think for all people the weight of them is equal? Do you know what I mean?
No.
Yeah, okay. Because I think that too.
Yeah, and that's in part why we are in this era, this post-truth era, and why so many people have gone back to being like, hey guys, there is such a thing as reality. There is such a thing as what did and didn't happen. And we desperately need to agree on that.
That also makes me think of. I didn't finish the Pods of America episode.
What episode was it?
It's the one they aired yesterday. Did you
okay.
listen?
With Dan and yeah, I did.
And they're just talking about, people being impressed by Trump's tone.
Yeah.
This is a new president's tone. And they're so impressed. I don't know. And they're kind of going on about like, can we get over the presentation of something? Like it doesn't matter how his performance was. What matters is what his actions have been and what they will be.
And what he's saying is happening.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very well made point, actually.
Yeah.
That people have gone in circles reporting about how he's handled passing on the information without commenting on the information. Because he is contradicted like almost instantly by people being like, actually, you can't do, just stay home. It's really weird. Welcome to the news.
Nice paper.
Is it?
Now would be the time. You would think other things would have caused me to get interested. I've dabbled, but no, I'm here. I'm going to do this.
I mean, I think this is a good time, actually, because whether or not you know anything about this, it has equal capacity to impact your life, which is the thing about it being like a physical thing that is not listening to spin.
Yeah.
In fact, I am like vaguely concerned that if especially if like the Republicans keep underplaying it, downplaying it, they might like lose all their people. Like, have they thought about the fact that they maybe want to protect their voters?
I don't know what they're thinking.
Like, it seems impossible that this is not going to come home to roost.
It's like they just don't want it, so they think that they're pretending it's not happening. It will go away.
Yeah, but
it's just continue to happen.
Extremely, obviously, overtly not going.
And this is also like so much bigger than America. We really are all in this together. This will affect everything. This will affect like trade and the markets, regardless. So deal with it and get on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, I know this will affect Canada. This is
it's affecting everyone.
But also, I was reading an article yesterday about the film industry in Canada and how dependent it is, to be honest, on the film industry here. And so if America isn't doing well and can't have productions come across borders,
yeah, that makes sense.
Then Canada gets screwed over. So, like, our livelihood is very much tied up with America.
And everyone, like, every country's is.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the world that we've made here.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how much this is going to affect things. Like, I'm starting to think, like, 4 years down the line, this will still be...
I mean, the only thing...
still not for both things. Or at least. Not to mention debt and all of that kind of thing.
Not financially? Because financially, that seems extremely, like, likely.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily... I don't know... You know, even the talk about, like, getting a vaccination to every single human being on the planet. How is that? I know very smart people are dealing with that. It just seems like 8 billion vaccinations. Okay.
Definitely. Diseases have been eradicated before.
Right.
Nobody has this shit. Where is it? This thing?
Hmm?
Nobody has this.
What is
Who was
that?
born here? It's a smallpox vaccination
Hmm.
that they stopped doing in the US. Like people my age don't have this. If they were, when I see people with this, it's because they weren't born here.
Oh.
Roughly my age. I think maybe older Americans have it, but
Hmm.
I don't know if they do actually. Why did older Americans get their smallpox vaccines? Like physically on their body wear. Interesting.
Why do they leave such a mark?
Because it's like a round thing with a bunch of little needles, and you get it like when you're a baby.
And you're saying the younger people didn't get it?
No, because it was eradicated.
It's
So,
gone.
I mean,
So we don't
yes
need
and
to-
no. But they stopped vaccinating for it. It was that eradicated.
Oh.
So yeah, shortly after I was born, I want to say, they were like, "Hey, we don't need to do this."
You were like, damn it.
I was like, "I'm gonna smallpox everybody," and then what? Yeah. Maybe they just had a more effective way of doing it here that didn't leave that big of a scar. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought I got one.
My sister has one. Both my parents have them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh no,
I want one.
you do?
That was cool.
Does it?
It's like, no, got a little.
It's like a little baby son.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
Far enough.
Mm.
So that is.
So that's where I'm at.
Cool.
Yeah.
I am neck deep in Questlove DJ sets. It's the greatest. Wearing my Ritz shirts. Yeah, I feel pretty freaking grateful for that. And yeah, today was a very weird day. I woke up with a horrible headache and then went back to sleep and woke up at like 2.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah.
The house felt so quiet.
It was very weird. I don't know what was happening. But up and immediately woke out, which I was not sure I was going to go. Like all day it was like, I just woke up. So we'll see.
Was it okay?
Monster beasted it.
Yeah.
I was like, I guess the 24 hours of sleep.
There you go. It's the new amount of sleep, daily recommended amount of sleep.
It's so hard to say, honestly. It really is very hard to say what the impacts are. So today I also felt extremely sad.
Yeah.
And one very small thing happened, and I was like in tears. And I don't know why. Like maybe everything's just a little bit magnified.
Like maybe everyone on the planet now has depression.
Not the Italians, man. Probably not the Koreans.
I don't know. It's all
Speaking of people with base today.
seriously.
Yeah.
One more reason why I wish I was Korean. Can I just change cultures and identities and skin tones, please?
Yeah, that's a real thing. You probably could. You'd end up being like that Rachel Dolezal weirdo, but
Who's on?
you don't know Rachel Dolezal is.
Mm-hmm.
She's a nut.
Right.
She like definitely is 100% sure she's black, even though she's 100%
Oh,
not.
yes.
And
That'd
it's
be
like,
so weird if I suddenly was like, I'm Korean.
yeah,
That would be super. I wonder if I could convince people that I was part Korean.
I'm sure you could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in no small part because people don't go around being like, no, you're not what you say you are.
Right. who's gonna, I don't know.
People would be like, oh, okay.
Then they'd be like, show me your 23andMe. I'd be like, no. Speaking of, I just did 23andMe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Did you do that ever?
No. I am not sending my genetic material some weird fucking place that I don't know what's happening to it.
Shit. Dude, YouTube. This keeps happening. They did not do this properly.
I just show up. I just show up, and then the crew's like already set up everything because they've been here since 5 in the morning. And then I leave, and they're still there, like working.
This would be such a weird idea for an evening show. I was gonna say, like, it should be morning show, but it's an evening show.
What would be?
Imagine if this was like really, really high quality, like
if
The
we had
View.
If we had the crew, you just need some
The
like
View,
MG
but then like
documents.
all the ladies on The View pull out their iPhones and start reading War and Peace. That's basically what we're doing.
Yeah. I want to stream it on Instagram somehow.
I was looking at okay, so Instagram is this outlier that you can't multicast on.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah. But another way to do it is people in MacGyver, like, they literally tape their phones to their computers. And
Why don't
then,
they just put them
and then
there?
like live stream Insta at the same time as live streaming something else,
Yeah.
right? Just using a different device.
Yeah.
So we'd have to figure it out because, maybe we could do it from your phone. Yeah. We could try this tomorrow if you want.
Sure.
So literally, you just have to decide like where, if you want it to be like imitating basically the same look.
I really care about the look of this. It needs to be cohesive, coherent, continuous. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or like you could do a different angle.
Cameras.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Okay, so we'll try tomorrow.
Let's make this all happen. But I want to do it on both of our things at the same time.
Impossible.
What do you mean?
I use my phone for my book.
I know, but can't you get it on the Jambo?
Oh, I can! Okay, we'll look into this. I have another device. I forgot.
You've got like a legit other device. But I'm pretty jealous of. So, there's that.
Never mind.
And it is. Oh, and it is.
I have never gotten so many compliments.
Are people like, nice, remarkable?
Yes, it is. Showing the back.
Literally.
You know how like you have your favorite dress that always gets commented on there? It feels like that. It's like my favorite dress.
I always lose my favorite dresses.
Yes. You lose them?
Yeah.
How do you lose them?
I do not know.
How does one lose a dress?
I don't know this is
hard.
a real thing. I lose items of clothing. I don't know where my freaking Crunch baseball shirt with the black arms that I used to wear all the time. I don't know where that is either.
Can they literally go to someplace?
I don't know. I asked the last person whose house I might have left things at, and he was 100% certain that it wasn't there.
I kind of need more like some quantum field vortex that last
No, I
items of clothing go to.
wouldn't put it out as.
So I've lost socks. Have I lost socks here?
But those usually go into that like thing.
The filter?
Not the filter, the lid of that. But I looked in there the other day, so I don't think that.
I love how like
Yeah,
my
nice.
brain goes to something more mystical, far before something magical.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
People have different types of brains.
Or in the absence of understanding.
This is the last straw.
Serious.
I'm gonna have a Christian Bale moment on.
I want to see that.
You haven't seen it?
No, I want to see your Christian.
Oh,
I've seen it.
You have. I mean, heard it.
Yeah.
How weird was it? Really deep, to me, deeply weird.
Mm-hmm. Why do we all get over that too?
I don't know. I've never gotten over it. I think it's kind of strange still that he just like continues to be.
Right. At what point is just bad behavior not acceptable?
You don't. That's not.
There's lots of actors in the world. Come on.
That's not a real question, though.
Here's a real question.
At no point is the answer.
At no point.
Correct. People like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby get away for decades with bad behavior. So, and I'm sure there were a lot of people before that who didn't get prosecuted. So, the answer is there's no point at which bad behavior.
Yeah. Or there hasn't been.
Technicality. Maybe. That's a very optimistic way of looking at it. I think for every Harvey Weinstein, there are like numerous other people that are not doing.
Definitely. 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, sadly, there's no moratorium on bad behavior. But yeah, that was super weird. Yeah.
And they're just like, but he's such a great actor.
Which basically just like comes down on his side in that. Because he's losing his mind about his ability to do his job.
Right.
Which he obviously thinks he does really well.
Don't you know to be a great actor, you have to be terrible to human beings? That's part of his process.
Wasn't he like yelling at the DP?
Yeah. It makes me think of McEnroy.
No.
The tennis player? That's his name, right?
McEnroe.
McEnroe?
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched this documentary about him. And I didn't know anything about him. But yeah, it was like him throwing fits with the referees made him a better player. Like literally. He like got off on it and it juiced him up. Most people are the opposite. They kind of need to keep a level head to keep their focus. He thrived off of it.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's really healthy. I have a thing to say about this, but I think it might be a spoiler, so I'm not going to. About John McEnroe and a show that's about to happen on Netflix. Yeah, there's a connection. It's not a show about John McEnroe.
Oh, watch. Okay, don't say it then. Just leave us wondering.
It's not that.
And
It's
then
that I don't want to get in
come
trubs.
Okay. That's okay.
What? You never know weird things.
Fair. We'll know when it comes out.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, this is funny.
And it'll be pretty soon, so.
Okay.
We can talk about it in like a week or 2 weeks.
Okay. We are on book 6, open, chapter 12. Last night, what did we read?
We read Pierre's journal.
Yes, we did. Pierre started writing morning pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going through a lot with these new rules and these new scientific understandings about mercury, salt, and sulfur. Oh yeah, they are.
Oh my God.
Okay, we're closing things. On my dance workouts.
I just want to say that Aaron commented on how many tabs I have open, both on my computer and in life, in my brain, and that is nothing compared to how many tabs are open on my computer.
Really?
This is an F fucking mother of tongue.
Probably at least 20.
Like, you can't even see what they are. It's so small. They're so small.
That's such an Aaron thing to comment on.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Judge a person based on how many tabs they keep open.
I think it might bother him that how distracted.
Oh. Do you think the amount of tabs that a person keeps open on their computer correlates to how many tabs they keep open on their brain?
Possibly.
Look.
Oh my god. It's streaming this whole thing, this whole conversation.
So. Yeah, because it's super interesting. Okay, I think that's good.
Plus, you just dissed our one fan.
I did?
Yeah.
It was a compliment. She's like, way to pay attention to details here.
Yeah.
Way to like be onto something. Yeah.
He's really up to something.
Everyone, clean up your tabs. You know how it's like keep your workspace clean?
Yeah. Clean up your
Keep your tab space clean. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like just bookmark that. Don't get around to it. You don't have to keep it open.
Condo your fucking browser. Is this tab bringing you joy? Is it sparking joy?
How would I hold it?
Close it. Close it. I don't know how you would hold it. You'd put your hand on it.
That's weird. Okay. So we were talking about Pierre and his letters.
He's trying really hard to like bars, to be cool to bars. It's not going that great. It's actually, there's mixed results.
He's back with his wife.
In a sense. But he's not back as a husband.
In the conjugal sense.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife has become a very well-respected lady about town.
Even though she's a dumbass.
Which we didn't know until we knew.
That's how it goes with her. She's just all surprises.
She's definitely sleeping with Boris. And Pierre
is trying not to know that.
He's really trying hard not to. Yeah. He's having all kinds of bodily reactions to Boris and then being like, but why? Why don't I like him?
It must be because I don't love God
Let me
enough.
instead double down on my friendship with him and invite him over to the Brotherhood.
Yeah. Yep. I just need to love harder. And then he pretty much sponsors him into the fucking...
He's a Rhetor.
Masons. And then he's his Rhetor. He's like...
His
efficient.
Initiator. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And... hates him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, when I was giving him this like totally unsolicited entry into the Brotherhood, I wanted to stab him through the chest.
I forgot about that part. Because there's a whole thing with a sword. And he's like, I don't know why, but I want.
Yeah, he's very confused by his own. And I'm very confused by his confusion. What else?
Vera is engaged to Berg.
Who's a national treasure. I fucking love that guy.
He's just... I want to stay here. I'm like, I could refresh it, but then I'll definitely split.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think that's why I wanted them to split.
So let's never refresh.
I'm going to close more things. Keep talking.
Berg basically has a couple of, I want to say, medals or distinctions, and each of them has come about, and his generally glowing reputation for being an A1 soldier has come about because of his repeated narratives, speaking of things that aren't true, getting repeated a lot, about the dumb ways in which he's gotten injured. And people just make an assumption based on how he talks about it that what he was doing was really important.
We keep raising. Tonight's interesting.
Tonight's a rough night. Yeah, so he basically picked up a grenade and took it somewhere and it hurt his hand. Which
I love that part.
That was so good.
I brought you a grenade.
Yeah. And then the way he retells it, everyone just assumes that the grenade needed to go to where he was taking it, but completely.
So he got some medals. Did he get some medals?
Yeah.
For that? Yeah. I gotta steal that. Did you know I did this?
Yeah. I think it's great. So yeah, that champion. This is how he won Vera as well. This is how he won Vera as well, because he has no rightful position or name or money or anything. And he's just Jedi mind tricked the family into thinking that he is a good match for her. So they're like, ooh, wonderful, yes, definitely, even though he's got not two pennies to rub together. Speaking of which, he then starts to ask about her dowry, which is non-existent because poor old man Rosto also doesn't have any pennies to rub together. Which I found to be a very upsetting scene.
Yeah.
And just a very upsetting issue in general.
I mean, they probably still have servants.
What are you saying, that he should call some tabs?
Probably. I'm sure you have some nice things in your house.
No, he's been selling stuff. He's been selling the real estate stuff. He's been selling what was supposed to be their dowries. Not real estate.
I'm just saying, for them to be hard up, it's it's all relative. I'm sure his version of being hard up is...
I have a YouTube thing to send you about this.
Really?
Yeah, there's this ancient meaning they're in their 70s, they're not ancient. Prince and princess that in India live basically in a post-colonial, but they're still living out their royal distinctions in this busted castle that doesn't have running water, that doesn't have basic things that a house has. Mm-hmm. So actually it's possible to have nothing. It's weird. It's pretty fucking weird. And they have a bloodhound. Oh, maybe not a blood, a greyhound, a really...
Such a good idea for a TV show.
Oh, it's bonkers. It already is. I think they're dead now, but yeah, a friend of mine sent me a thing about it, and it was it's gotta be real. And they have a butler who's wearing really filthy clothes. Oh. But they're all still doing it, and her accent is that flawless upper class, but then her hair is my hair.
You know what this makes me think of?
What?
Have you ever seen Documentary Now?
No.
Documentary Now?
No.
It's with Fred Armisen and Bill Hader and others. Yeah, and I think the first episode is this mother and her daughter, and Fred Armisen plays the mother, and Bill Hader plays the daughter, and they're batshit crazy, living in this creepy old house.
Wow.
And they're murderers, essentially. They keep inviting young boys over to their house to the daughter kind of has a Blanche Dubois thing going on.
Oh my god.
And these young men keep disappearing. And the daughter, Bill Hader, dances for them. He's do you want to see me dance? Everyone admires me for my dancing, and it's the worst thing you've ever seen or the best.
Oh my god, I need to see this now.
And he does this thing where he has this trick where he takes, their outfits are amazing. He likes to put things, so he does this like, that is basically just like he takes a shirt, like a sweater or something, and wraps it around his head.
Oh
But in this way, and he's like, that's my signature thing. It's just, it's good. Yeah.
And like had that super dark colonial layer.
Fascinating.
Hmm?
People are fascinating.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So who knows where they're at? But yeah, I think you're right. It seems no one's noticed.
I don't know. I've also heard that, you know, like the rich, the amount of things that they have to spend money on. Like most rich people are more in debt than people of middle class. Because
that
they
stresses
spend
me out
stupid
so
shit
much.
Maybe it's not stupid shit. It's just like once your world gets like really big, you have to hold it. You know.
I mean, you don't have to, but yeah.
Yeah, you have more expenses. So, yeah.
Like Bernie Sanders drives some shitty ass car.
Does he?
Yeah.
Of course he does.
Yeah. There's some people who don't, I think, do that. But by and large, most people do.
Yeah. I don't know if that's also like keeping up with the Joneses. It's like, depends on who your Joneses are.
Everybody's Joneses are. Yeah. So, chapter 12. Here we go. Natasha was 16, and it was the year 1809, the very year to which she had counted on her fingers with Boris after they had kissed 4 years ago. Since then, she had not seen him. Before Sonia and her mother, if Boris happened to be mentioned, she spoke quite freely of that episode as of some childish, long-forgotten matter that was not worth mentioning. But in the secret depths of her soul, the question whether her engagement to Boris was a jest or an important... Is it a pain in the butt?
I mean, it keeps. If you're okay with us keep having to do this, okay. We might be doing this a lot.
We've already done it a lot.
Since Boris left Moscow in 1805 to join the army, he had not seen the Rostovs. He had been in Moscow several times and had passed near Otradino, but had never been to see them.
Interesting. Sometimes it occurred to Natasha that he did not wish to see her, and this conjecture was confirmed by the sad tone in which her elders spoke of him.
Nowadays, old friends are not remembered, the Countess would say when Boris was mentioned.
Anna Mikhailovna also had of late visited them less frequently. Is that his mother? Seemed to hold herself with particular dignity, and always spoke rapturously and gratefully of the merits of her son and the brilliant career on which he had entered. When the Rostovs came to Petersburg, Boris called on them.
He drove to their house in some agitation. The memory of Natasha was his most poetic recollection. But he went with the firm intention of letting her and her parents feel that the childish relations between himself and Natasha could not be binding either on her or on him. He had a brilliant position in society thanks to his intimacy with Countess Bezhukova, a brilliant position in the service thanks to the patronage of an important personage whose complete confidence he enjoyed, and he was beginning to make plans for marrying one of the richest heiresses in Petersburg, plans which might very easily be realized. When he entered the Rostovs' drawing room, Natasha was in her own room. When she heard of his arrival, she almost ran into the drawing room, flushed and beaming with a more than cordial smile.
Boris remembered Natasha under her curls and boisterous childish laughter as he had known her 4 years before, and so he was taken back when quite a different Natasha entered. He didn't realize she had grown.
She's grown.
It's been okay. And his face expressed rapturous astonishment. Well, now, this expression on his face pleased Natasha.
Well, do you recognize your little madcap playmate? Asked the Countess.
Boris kissed Natasha's hand and said that he was astonished at the change in her.
How handsome you have grown.
I should think so, replied Natasha's laughing eyes.
And is Papa older? She asked.
Natasha sat down and, without joining in Boris's conversation with the Countess, silently and minutely studied her childhood's suitor. He felt the weight of that resolute and affectionate scrutiny and glanced at her occasionally.
Boris's uniform, spurs, tie, and the way his hair was brushed were all comme il faut and in the latest fashion. This Natasha noticed at once. He sat rather sideways in the armchair next to the Countess, arranging with his right hand the cleanest of gloves that fitted his left hand like a skin, and he spoke with particularly refined compression of his lips about the amusements of the highest Petersburg society, recalling with mild irony old times in Moscow and Moscow acquaintances. It was not accidentally, Natasha felt, that he alluded, when speaking of the highest aristocracy, to an ambassador's ball he had attended, and to invitations he had received from NN and SS.
What is NN and SS in this situation?
Is that like those French people that we met? I don't know why we don't know their names.
I mean, this whole time I've been kind of assuming that if the people are important, we'll know their names.
Yeah.
And this is more like a so-and-so kind of way of handling it. But this seems a bit odd this time to me. Mm-hmm. All this time, Natasha sat silent, glancing up at him from under her brows. Where else would she glance? This gaze... All this time, Natasha sat silent, glancing up at him from under her brows. This gaze disturbed and confused Boris more and more. He looked round more frequently toward her and broke off in what he was saying. He did not stay more than 10 minutes. Wow. Then rose and took his leave. The same inquisitive, challenging, and rather mocking eyes still looked at him. After his first visit, Boris said to himself that Natasha attracted him just as much as ever, but that he must not yield to that feeling, because to marry her, a girl almost without fortune, would mean ruin to his career, while to renew their former relations without intending to marry her would be dishonorable. Boris made up his mind to avoid meeting Natasha, but despite that resolution, he called again a few days later and began calling often and spending whole days at the Rostovs. But of course, it seemed to him that he ought to have an explanation with Natasha and tell her that the old times must be forgotten, that in spite of everything, she could not be his wife, that he had no means, and they would never let her marry him. But he failed to do so, and felt awkward about entering on such an explanation. From day to day, he became more and more entangled. It seemed to her mother and Sonia that Natasha was in love with Boris as of old. She sang him his favorite songs, showed him her album, making him write in it, did not allow him to allude to the past, letting it be understood how delightful was the present, and every day he went away in a fog, without having said what he meant to, and knowing what he was doing, or why he came, or how it would all end. He left off visiting Helena and received reproachful notes from her every day, and yet he continued to stay with the Rostovs. What do you think? Do you think Natasha is in love with him?
No.
I don't either.
She's like that with everyone. I think she
is.
likes admiration.
Mm-hmm.
So, she likes everyone being in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Nah, she ain't.
She isn't. I don't think so either.
Chapter 13. One night, when the old Countess, in nightcap and dressing jacket, without her false curl, poor little knob of hair showing under her white cotton cap, knelt sighing and groaning on a rug and bowing to the ground in prayer, her door creaked, and Natasha, also in a dressing jacket with slippers on her bare feet and her hair in curl papers, ran in. Finishing her last prayer. Can it be that this couch will be my grave? Natasha, flushed and eager, seeing her mother in prayer, suddenly checked her rush, half sat down, consciously put out her tongue as if chiding herself. Seeing that her mother was praying, she ran on tiptoe to the bed and, rapidly slipping one little foot against the other, pushed off her slippers and jumped onto the bed the Countess had feared might become her grave. This couch was high, with a feather bed and 5 pillows, each smaller than the one below. Natasha jumped on it, sank into the feather bed, rolled over to the wall, and began snuggling up the bedclothes as she settled down, raising her knees to her chin, kicking out and laughing almost inaudibly, now covering herself up head and all, and now peeping at her mother. The Countess finished her prayers and came to the bed with a stern face. But seeing that Natasha's head was covered, she smiled in her kind, weak way.
What a weird thing to finally know about this woman. That she's like, well, I die tonight.
Is that a traditional prayer?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
Now then, she said.
Mama, can we have a talk? Yes, said Natasha. Now just one on your throat and another, that'll do. And seizing her mother round the neck, she kissed her on the throat. In her behavior to her mother, Natasha seemed rough, but she was so sensitive and tactful that however she clasped her mother, she always managed to do it without hurting her or making her feel uncomfortable or displeased.
Well, what is it tonight? Said the mother, having arranged her pillows and waited until Natasha, after turning over a couple of times, had settled down beside her under the quilt, spread out her arms, and assumed a serious expression. Spread out her arms.
Spread out. What is it?
It's hard to look serious with your arms spread out. Okay.
These visits of Natasha's at night. Natasha put her hand on her mother's mouth.
About Boris, I know, she said seriously. That's what I have come about. Don't say it, I know. Do tell me. And she removed her hand. Tell me, Mama, he's nice.
Natasha, you're 16. At your age, I was married. You say Boris is nice. He's very nice, and I love him like a son. But what then? What are you thinking about? You've quite turned his head. I can see that.
As she said this, the Countess looked round at her daughter. Natasha was lying looking steadily straight before her at one of the mahogany sphinxes carved on the corners of the bedstead, so that the Countess only saw her daughter's face in profile. That face struck her by its peculiarly serious and concentrated expression.
Natasha was listening and considering.
Well, what then? Said she.
You have quite turned his head, and why? What do you want of him? You know you can't marry him.
Why not? Said Natasha, without changing her position.
Because he is young, because he is poor, because he is a relation, and because you yourself don't love him.
How do you know?
I know. It is not right, darling.
But if I want to, said Natasha.
Leave off talking nonsense, said the Countess.
But if I want to!
Natasha, I am in earnest.
Natasha did not let her finish. She drew the Countess's large hand to her, kissed it on the back, and then on the palm. Why is it large? Why does it need to be large?
Ask me something.
Strangely large. The Countess's weirdly large hand. Kissed it on the back and then on the palm. Then again turned it over and began kissing first one knuckle, then the space between the knuckles, then the next knuckle, whispering January, February, March, April, May. Speak, Mama. Why don't you say anything? Speak, said she, turning to her mother, who was tenderly gazing at her daughter, and in that contemplation seemed to have forgotten all she wished to say.
It won't do, my love. Not everyone will understand this friendship dating from your childish days, and to see him so intimate with you may injure you in the eyes of other young men who visit us. And above all, it torments him for nothing. He may already have found a suitable and wealthy match, and now he's half crazy.
Crazy, repeated Natasha.
I'll tell you some things about myself. I had a cousin.
I know Cyril Matveyk, but he is old.
He was not always old, but this is what I'll do, Natasha. I'll have a talk with Boris. He may not come so often.
Why not? If he likes to.
Because I know it will end in nothing.
How can you know? No. Well, I won't marry, but let him come if he enjoys it, and I enjoy it. Natasha smiled and looked at her mother. Not to marry, but just so, she added.
How so, my pet?
Just so. There's no need for me to marry him, but just so.
Just so, just so, repeated the Countess, and shaking all over, she went off into a good-humored, unexpected, elderly laugh.
Don't laugh! Stop it! Cried Natasha. You're shaking the whole bed. You're awfully like me. Just such another giggler. Wait. And she seized the Countess's hands and kissed a knuckle of the little finger, saying June, and continued kissing July. August, on the other hand. But, Mama, is he very much in love? What do you think? Does anybody ever so much in love with you. And he's very nice, very, very nice. Only not quite my taste. He's so narrow, like the dining room clock. Don't you understand? Narrow, gray, light gray.
Yeah. What rubbish you're talking, said the Countess.
I know what she's talking about,
Narrow? And then she's
Yeah.
like, gray.
Yeah.
Cool. I kind of know.
Okay.
It sounds like, what's that thing when you associate two different senses together?
Yeah.
What is that?
I forget. Natasha continued, don't you really understand? Nicholas would understand. Bezhukov now is... Nicholas? Oh, her brother. Bezhukov now is blue.
Pierre?
Dark blue and red. And he is square.
You flirt with him too, said the Countess.
No. He's a Freemason, I have found out. He is fine, dark blue, and red. How can I explain it to you?
Little Countess, the Count's voice called from behind the door. You're not asleep? Natasha jumped up, snatched up her slippers, and ran barefoot to her own room.
That seems like an overreaction. It was a long time before she could sleep.
Maybe it's because I read it wrong. Maybe it was, Little Countess! You're not asleep! Like, did your parents ever yell at you when you stayed up late?
I don't think he yelled. I don't know.
Or maybe, like, to my little ears. It was like...
Yeah, because you think you're belligerent when you're saying it.
When I'm like
saying
I don't know.
It was a long time before she could sleep. She kept thinking that no one could understand all that she understood and all there was in her.
Sonia, she thought, glancing at that curled up, sleeping little kitten with her enormous plait of hair. No, how could she? She's virtuous. She fell in love with Nicholas and does not wish to know anything more. Even Mamma does not understand. It is wonderful how clever I am and how charming she is. She went on, speaking of herself in the third person and imagining it some very wise
Oh, so
man.
charming is still her.
Charming. She is. Oh, okay. Great.
That is really funny to me. How clever I am. How charming she is. Talking about herself. Oh, that's so weird. Okay.
And imagining it was some very wise man, the wisest and best of men, who was saying it of her. Charming she is. There is everything in her, continued this man. She's unusually intelligent, charming, and then she is pretty, uncommonly pretty and agile. She swims and rides splendidly, and her voice, one could really say it's a wonderful voice.
She hummed a scrap from her favorite opera by Cherubini, threw herself on her bed, laughed at the pleasant thought that she would immediately fall asleep, called Dunyasha, the maid, to put out the candle. She couldn't put out the candle.
Blow for me.
And before Dunyasha had left the room, had already passed into yet another happier world of dreams, where everything was as light and beautiful as in reality, and even more so because it was different.
Next day, the Countess called Boris aside and had a talk with him, after which he ceased coming over to the Rostovs.
I mean, obviously her whole worldview is going to get crushed.
What?
Yes.
What?
How wonderful everything. Okay.
I think. Pierre. She likes Pierre better.
You think she's going to have
She doesn't like him.
happy ending with... I'm not saying she
The
does.
same thing happened with Denisov.
I'm not saying she likes him.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that the quality of her as a character,
Mm.
like she needs to be snuffed out. She's a light.
Oh, this
That's
is going
what
to
I'm
get
saying.
dark.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. You mean like by the end of the book?
Yeah, I'm saying
I
like
thought you meant like because Boris doesn't come around. I was like,
No,
she'll be fine.
no, you're
At
not
the end
all.
of this, right?
I mean that narratively speaking,
Yeah,
the place that she is,
that's cool.
like this is not.
That's a nice story arc. Tolstoy. That's great. someone who's full of life. Let's create these two guys who are like weird and messed up, and then this one character who's full of life, and she will get diminished over time.
I think that's what's going to happen.
And they're gonna have the opposite trajectory. Great.
You think they'll have the opposite?
No, I don't know. I don't know how bleak this is gonna get.
I feel like it's gonna get bleak.
Mm-hmm.
We're still so early in the book.
That's true.
Okay. Chapter 14.
Uh-huh.
On the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, 1809 to 10, an old grande of Catherine's day was giving a ball and midnight supper. The diplomatic corps and the emperor himself were to be present.
The Grande's well-known mansion on the English quay glittered with innumerable lights. Quay.
Quay.
Why don't I know how to pronounce things? Quay. Really?
Yeah.
I think that's just because that's a word that you only ever see written and you never have to say.
Yeah, I think that's very possible.
Okay. The English quay glittered with innumerable lights.
I think the only reason I know any of these words is my dad.
Really?
Who keeps coming up in this podcast, yeah. Yeah.
And he would be like,
my dad has an extensive...
Did you know it's pronounced key? How would that even come up?
I don't know.
Huh.
My dad knows a lot of words.
You said, too, at one point that you pay attention to language. Like, language was important growing up.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I think...
Of language.
That's one of the things we had in common.
Mm. Yeah. Whereas my dad's kind of been like, oh, if you have to describe it, it ruins it.
Right.
Police were stationed at the brightly lit entrance, which was carpeted with red baize. And not only gendarmes, but dozens of police officers and even the police master himself stood at the porch. Carriages kept driving away and fresh ones arriving with red liveried footmen and footmen in plumed hats. From the carriages emerged men wearing uniforms, stars, and ribbons, while ladies in satin and ermine cautiously descended the carriage steps, which were let down for them with a clatter, and then walked hurriedly and noiselessly over the bays at the entrance.
What freaking country is this?
I think we're still in Russia. No, wait. I think we're still in Russia.
Okay.
What's bays? I just want to understand what this is. A coarse,
an English
green
though.
Woolen material resembling felt. Huh. Okay.
Where does it say the English key?
I think that's an area in Moscow.
Okay.
I guess.
Almost every time a new carriage drove up, a whisper ran through the crowd and caps were doffed.
The emperor? No, a minister, prince, ambassador. Don't you see the plumes? Was whispered among the crowd.
One person, better dressed than the rest, seemed to know everyone and mentioned by name the greatest dignitaries of the day.
A third of the visitors had already arrived, but the Rostovs, who were to be present, were still hurrying to get dressed.
There had been many discussions and preparations for this ball in the Rostov family. Many fears that the invitation would not arrive, that the dresses would not be ready, or that something would not be arranged as it should be.
Maria Ignatievna Voronskaya, a thin and shallow maid of honor at the court of the Dowager Empress, was a friend and relation of the Countess and piloted the provincial Rostovs in Petersburg.
Piloted them. Interesting. They were to call for her at her house in the Taurida, I don't know, gardens at 10 o'clock. But it was already 5 minutes to 10 and the girls were not yet dressed.
Natasha was going to her first grand ball. She had got up at 8 that morning and had been in a fever of excitement and activity all day. All her powers since morning had been concentrated on ensuring that they all, she herself, Mama, and Sonia, should be as well dressed as possible. Sonia and her mother put themselves entirely in her hands. The Countess was to wear a clary-colored velvet dress, and the two girls white gauze over pink silk slits, with roses on their bodices and their hair dressed à la grecque.
Everything essential had already been done. Feet, hands, neck, and ears washed, perfumed, and powdered as befits a ball. The openwork silk stockings and white satin shoes with ribbons were already on. The hairdressing was almost done. Sonia was finishing dressing, and so was the Countess, but Natasha, who had bustled about helping them all, was behindhand. She was still sitting before a looking-glass with a dressing jacket thrown over her slender shoulders. Sonia stood ready, dressed in the middle of the room, and pressing the head of a pin till it hurt her dainty finger, was fixing on a last ribbon that squeaked as the pin went through it.
That's not the way, Sonia, cried Natasha, turning her head and clutching with both hands at her hair, which the maid who was dressing it had not time to release. That bow is not right. Come here.
Sonia sat down, and Natasha pinned the ribbon on differently.
Allow me, miss. I can do it like that, said the maid who was holding Natasha's hair.
Oh, I can't. Okay. Oh dear. Well then, wait. That's right, Sonia.
Aren't you ready? It is nearly 10, came the Countess's voice.
Directly, and you, Mama.
I have only my cap to pin on.
Don't do it without me, called Natasha. You won't do it right.
But it is already 10.
They had decided to be at the ball.
When her hair was done, Natasha, in her short petticoat from under which her dancing shoes showed, and in her mother's dressing jacket, ran up to Sonia, scrutinized her, and then ran to her mother. Turning her mother's head this way and that, she fastened on the cap, and hurriedly kissing her gray hair, ran back to the maids who were turning up the hem of her skirt.
The cause of the delay was Natasha's skirt, which was too long. Two maids were turning up the hem and hurriedly biting off the ends of thread. A third, with pins in her mouth, was running about between the Countess and Sonia, and a fourth held the whole of the gossamer garment up high on one uplifted hand.
Mavra, quicker, darling!
Give me the thimble. Give me my thimble, miss, from there.
Whenever will you be ready? Asked the Count, coming to the door. Here's some scent. Peronskaya must be tired of waiting.
It's ready, miss, said the maid, holding up the shortened gauze dress with two fingers and blowing and shaking something off it, as if by this to express a consciousness of the airiness and purity of what she held.
Natasha began putting on the dress.
In a minute, don't come in, Papa, she cried to her father as he opened the door, speaking from under the filmy skirt which still covered her whole face.
Sonia slammed the door to. A minute later, they let the Count in. He was wearing a blue swallowtail coat, shoes, and stockings, and was perfumed and his hair pomaded.
Oh, Papa, how nice you look! Charming, cried Natasha, as she stood in the middle of the room smoothing out the folds of the gauze.
If you please, miss, allow me, said the maid, who on her knees was pulling the skirt straight and shifting the pins from one side of her mouth to the other with her tongue.
Say what you like, exclaimed Sonia in a despairing voice as she looked at Natasha. Say what you like, it's still too long.
Natasha stepped back to look at herself in the pier glass. The dress was too long.
Really, madam, it is not at all too long, said Mavra, crawling on her knees after her young lady.
Well, if it's too long, we'll take it up. We'll tack it up in 1 minute, said the resolute Dunyasha, taking a needle that was stuck on the front of her little shawl and still kneeling on the floor, set to work at once.
At that moment, with soft steps, the Countess came in shyly in her cap and velvet gown.
Ooh, my beauty, exclaimed the Count. She looks better than any of you.
He would have embraced her, but blushing, she stepped aside, fearing to be rumpled.
Mamma, your cap. More to this side, said Natasha. I'll arrange it. And she rushed forward so that the maids who were tacking up her skirt could not move fast enough, and a piece of gauze was torn off.
Oh, goodness, what has happened? Really, it was not my fault.
Never mind, I'll run it up. It won't show, said Dunyasha.
What a beauty.
At 10:15, they at last got into their carriages and started, but they had still to call at the Taurida Gardens.
Peronskaya was quite ready. In spite of her age and plainness, she had gone through the same process as the Rostovs, but with less flurry, for to her it was a matter of routine. Her ugly old body was washed, perfumed, and powdered in just the same way. Cool. She had washed behind her ears just as carefully, and when she entered, what is this? Like they're bathing as a special occasion?
Yeah.
That's disgusting. She had washed behind her ears just as carefully, and when she entered her drawing room in her yellow dress, wearing her badge as maid of honor, her old lady's maid, was as full of rapturous admiration as the Rostov servants had been.
She praised the Rostovs' toilettes. They praised her taste and toilette, and at 11 o'clock, careful of their coiffures and dresses, they settled themselves in their carriages and drove off.
Chapter 15.
Mm-hmm.
Natasha had not had a moment free since early morning and had not once had time to think of what lay before her.
In the damp, chill air and crowded closeness of the swaying carriage, she for the first time vividly imagined what was in store for her there at the ball, in those brightly lighted rooms, with music, flowers, dances, the emperor, and all the brilliant young people of Petersburg. The prospect was so splendid that she hardly believed it would come true, so out of keeping was it with the chill darkness and closeness of the carriage. She understood all that awaited her only when, after stepping over the red baize at the entrance, she entered the hall, took off her fur cloak, and, beside Sonia and in front of her mother, mounted the brightly illuminated stairs between the flowers. Only then did she remember how she must behave at a ball, and tried to assume the majestic air she considered indispensable for a girl on such occasion. But fortunately for her, she felt her eyes growing misty. She saw nothing clearly, her pulse beat 100th the minute, and the blood throbbed at her heart. She could not assume that pose, which would have made her ridiculous, and she moved on almost fainting from excitement and trying with all her might to conceal it. And this was the very attitude that became her best. Before and behind them, other visitors were entering, also talking in low tones and wearing ball dresses. The mirrors on the landing reflected ladies in white, pale blue, and pink dresses, with diamonds and pearls on their bare necks and arms.
What a weird attitude to describe as becoming her best.
But she's almost
She's
ill.
like repressing her excitement and trying not to like let it show. She's like, Natasha looked in the mirrors and could not distinguish her reflection from the others. All was blended into one brilliant procession. On entering the ballroom, the regular hum of voices, footsteps, and greetings deafened Natasha, and the light and glitter dazzled her still more. The host and hostess, who had already been standing at the door for half an hour, repeating the same words to the various guests, Charme de vous voir. Charme?
Yeah,
Wouldn't it
I
be-
think it should be Charme de Louvois.
It should, right?
Yeah.
Can you see how I like know things about French?
Imagine if you, yeah, she's learning French through this book.
Actually, I already learned French when I was a kid.
Okay. You're improving, right?
Yeah. Greeted the Rostovs and Peronskaya in the same manner.
The two girls in their white dresses, each with a rose in her black hair, both curtsied in the same way. But the hostess's eyes involuntarily rested longer on the slim Natasha. She looked at her and gave her alone a special smile in addition to her usual smile as hostess. So she's like, Looking at her, she may have recalled the golden, irrecoverable days of her own girlhood and her own first ball. The host also followed Natasha with his eyes and asked the Count which was his daughter.
Charming, said he, kissing the tips of his fingers. Ew.
I hate that.
I hate that too.
In the ballroom, guests stood crowding at the entrance doors awaiting the emperor. The Countess took up a position in one of the front rows of that crowd. Natasha heard and felt that several people were asking about her and looking at her. She realized that those noticing her liked her, and this observation helped to calm her.
There are some like ourselves and some worse, she thought.
Peronskaya was pointing out to the Countess the most important people at the ball.
That is the Dutch ambassador, do you see that? Who was surrounded by ladies laughing at something he said.
Oh, here she is, the Queen of Petersburg, Countess Bezhukova, said Peronskaya, indicating Helena, who had just entered. Lovely. She's quite equal to Maria Antonovna. See how the men, young and old, pay court to her. Beautiful and clever. They say Prince is quite mad about her. But see, those two, though not good-looking, are even more run after.
She pointed to a lady who was crossing the room, followed by a very plain daughter.
She's a splendid match, a millionairess, said Peronskaya. And look, here come her suitors.
That is Bezhukova's brother, Anatoly Kuragin, she said, indicating a handsome officer of the horse guards who passed by them with head erect, looking at something over the heads of the ladies. He's handsome, isn't he? I hear they will marry him to that rich girl. But your cousin, Drubetskoy, is also very attentive to her. They say she has millions. Oh, yes, that's the French ambassador himself. She replied to the Countess's inquiry about Caulaincourt. Looks as if he were a king. All the same, the French are charming, very charming. No one is more charming in society. Ah, here she is. Yes, she's still the most beautiful of them all, our Maria Antonovna. And how simply she is dressed. Lovely. And that stout one in spectacles is the universal Freemason, she went on, indicating Pierre. Put him beside his wife and he looks a regular buffoon.
Pierre, swaying his stout body, advanced, making way through the crowd and nodding to right and left as casually and good-naturedly as if he were passing through a crowd at a fair. He pushed through, evidently looking for someone.
Natasha looked joyfully at the familiar face of Pierre, the buffoon, as Perenskaya had called him, and he knew he was looking for them, and for her in particular.
He had promised to be at the ball and introduce partners to her.
But before he reached them, Pierre stopped beside a very handsome... Where did they know each other from?
They met a while back, and there was they smiled at each other.
I don't remember.
I don't exactly remember, but I know they liked each other. Or he was looking. I think he might have already been married, though.
Was it not... I remember them being at the dinner party at the very top of the thing.
And Natasha wasn't there.
Yeah, she was.
Really?
Mm-hmm. She was like a baby. That's where they kissed and stuff. Her and Boris.
That was a dinner party?
Mm-hmm.
And the children came in? Oh, okay.
Yeah, when she did some weird, thing of I don't like peaches or some weird demonstration.
That wasn't the
dessert.
very, very first party.
Yeah.
I think that was a different one.
No, I mean one of the big parties towards the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, not the one where Pierre went in and said something weird with all the circles of people. Not that one.
So maybe they were both there, and then there's some party I'm remembering where
Since
he was admiring her. Yeah, I think she was a bit grown up, and he was maybe married at the time.
Yeah, that one I don't remember. Okay. But before he reached them, Pierre stopped beside a very handsome dark man of middle height in a white uniform who stood by a window talking to a tall man wearing stars and a ribbon. Natasha at once recognized the shorter and younger man in the white uniform. It was Bolkonsky, who seemed to her to have grown much younger, happier, and better looking.
There's someone else we know. Bolkonsky, do you see, Mama? Said Natasha, pointing out Prince Andrew. You remember he stayed a night with us at Otradno.
Oh, you know him, said Perenskaya. I can't bear him. Il fait à présent la pluie et le beau temps. Which is...
He's all the rage just now.
He's so hot right now.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
what that
much.
means. Yeah. He's too proud for anything. Takes after his father, and he's hand in glove with Speransky writing some project or other. Just look how he treats the ladies. There's one talking to him, and he's turned away, she said, pointing at him. I'd give it to him if he treated me as he does those ladies. Everyone who's anyone is at this ball. Have you noticed?
The thing. Something good is going to happen.
Everyone we know is at this ball.
Something juicy better happen.
Except for Mary.
Mary, she's at home working on her geometry.
She's at home with her hideousness. She's at home being ugly and devout.
Ugly people get to go to balls too, okay?
Not in this book.
Apparently Perenskaya gets to.
They live far away.
So we're in Petersburg.
Yeah, I think they live out of town. But I don't know why they don't
live in
get...
the country.
Don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They could still make the journey. I never know how far away these places are.
We could have a map.
I know. How far is it from Moscow to Petersburg?
Let's feature a map on tomorrow's edition.
Ooh, we could. I wonder if I could figure out, now that I figured out how to share a screen, I wonder if I could do that simultaneously.
Or
I think it'd be very...
dangerous. Everyone will see your tabs.
Show me your tabs. Imagine if I was let me do that.
You can probably learn a shit ton about a person from their
Couldn't
tabs.
you?
I need to see your tabs. If we're going to quarantine together, I'm going to have to see your tabs. Too late. Okay. What?
I was just thinking, yes, continue.
I was just thinking of what, chapter 16?
I actually like those Show Me Your Tabs.
Yeah, I like it too.
Okay.
Chapter 16. Suddenly, everybody stirred, began talking, and pressed forward and then back, and between the two rows which separated, the emperor entered, to the sounds of music that had immediately struck up. Behind him walked his host and hostess. He walked in rapidly, bowing to the right and left as if anxious to get the first moments of the reception over. The band played the Polonaise, whatever that is, in vogue at that time, on account of the words that had been set to it, beginning, Alexander, Elisaveta, all our hearts you ravish quite. The emperor passed on to the drawing room. The crowd made a rush for the doors, and several persons with excited faces hurried there and back again. Then the crowd hastily retired from the drawing room door, at which the emperor reappeared, talking to the hostess. This is so weird. A young man, looking distraught, pounced down on the ladies, asking them to move aside. Some ladies, with faces betraying complete forgetfulness of all the rules of decorum, pushed forward to the detriment of their toilets, whatever that means. The men began to choose partners and take their places for the Polonaise.
The Polonaise! Everyone moved back, and the emperor came smiling out of the drawing room, leading his hostess by the hand, but not keeping time to the music. The host followed with Maria Antonovna Narishkina. Then came ambassadors, ministers, and various generals, whom Peronskaya diligently named. More than half the ladies already had partners and were taking up or preparing to take up their positions for the Polonaise. Natasha felt that she would be left with her mother and Sonia among a minority of women who crowded near the wall, not having been invited to dance. She stood with her slender arms hanging down, her scarcely defined bosom rising and falling regularly, and with bated breath and glittering frightened eyes gazed straight before her, evidently prepared for the height of joy or misery. She was not concerned about the emperor or any of those great people whom Peronskaya was pointing out. She had but one thought. Is it possible no one will ask me that I shall not be among the first to dance? Is it possible that not one of these men will notice me? They do not even seem to see me, or if they do, they look as if they were saying, she's not the one I'm after, so it's not worth looking at her. No, it's impossible, she thought. They must know how I long to dance, how splendidly I dance, and how they would enjoy dancing with me.
She's so self-absorbed in, like, a really naive, kind of sweet way.
Yeah, it's kind of likable.
The strains of the Polonaise, which had continued for a considerable time, had begun to sound like a sad reminiscence to Natasha's ears. She wanted to cry. Peronskaya had left them. The Count was at the other end of the room. She and the Countess and Sonia were standing by themselves as in the depths of a forest amid that crowd of strangers, with no one interested in them and not wanted by anyone. Prince Andrew with a lady passed by, evidently not recognizing them. The handsome Anatoly was smilingly talking to a partner on his arm and looked at Natasha as one looks at a wall. Boris passed them twice, and each time turned away. Berg and his wife, who were not dancing, came up to them.
This family gathering seemed humiliating to Natasha, as if there were nowhere else for the family to talk but here at the ball. She did not listen to or look at Vera, who was telling her something about her own green dress.
I had danced with 3, and the music ceased. A worried aide-de-camp ran up to the Rostovs, requesting them to stand further back, though
Can you go over there? They're like in the cloak
closet. Kings. Oh. Requesting them to stand farther back, though obviously this is all going to change any moment, right?
Oh yeah, someone's going to ask her.
Maybe.
And then her dance card is going to be full up.
It's gonna be good. Imagine if it's not.
For Cinderella.
Cinderella.
It'd be interesting if Cinderella was ugly.
Why?
Because then she like goes to the ball. She's like, I'm here. And then no one wants to answer there.
And that's the end of the story.
Yeah, it'd be such a different story.
And then she'd be like, great, what's the fucking fairy
why did I
godmother
do
for?
that? And she'd be like, balls aren't really that great. Okay. I'm just going to stay at home. And then she starts a business from her.
This is why Into the Woods is great, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't like you agree.
Yeah.
You don't like it.
Yeah. I need to revisit it.
Yeah. Okay, where are we?
They have to back up.
Though, as it were, they were already close to the wall. And from the gallery resounded the distinct, precise, enticingly rhythmical strains of a waltz. The emperor looked smilingly down the room. A minute passed, but no one had yet begun dancing. An aide-de-camp, the master of ceremonies, went up to Countess Bezhukova and asked her to dance. She smilingly raised her hand and laid it on his shoulder without looking at him. The aide-de-camp, an adept in his art — oh, I didn't know adept could be used as a noun. An adept in his art, grasping his partner firmly, apart from the ever-quickening music being the rhythmic click of the spurs of his rapid, agile feet, while at every third beat his partner's velvet dress spread out and seemed to flash as she whirled around. Natasha gazed at them and was ready to cry because it was not she who was dancing that first turn of the waltz.
Prince Andrew, in the white uniform of a cavalry colonel, wearing stockings and dancing shoes, stood looking animated and bright in the front row of the circle not far from the Rostovs. Baron Fairhoff was talking to him about the first sitting of the Council of State to be held next day. Prince Andrew, as one closely connected with Speransky and participating in the work of the Legislative Commission, could give reliable information about that sitting, concerning which various rumors were current. But not listening to what Fairhoff was saying, he was gazing now at the sovereign, and now at the men intending to dance who had not yet gathered courage to enter the circle.
Prince Andrew was watching these men abashed by the emperor's presence. Oh, watching the men abashed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. And the women who were breathlessly longing to be asked to dance.
Pierre came up to him and caught him by the arm.
You always dance. I have a protege, the young Rostova. Here, ask her, he said.
Where is she? Asked Bolkonsky. Excuse me, he added, turning to the Baron. We will finish this conversation elsewhere at a ball. One must dance. He stepped forward in the direction Pierre indicated.
He's going to be like, oh no.
Time's going to stop.
Yeah.
The despairing, dejected expression of Natasha's face caught his eye. He recognized her, guessed her feelings, saw that it was her debut, remembered her conversation at the window, and with an expression of pleasure on his face, approached Countess Rostova. He's like, oh, now you need me. Now you know who I am.
Now you notice me. Imagine if he's like, do you want to dance? And she's like, oh, sure, I will. And he's like, oh, are you talking to me? I'm sorry. Okay. Allow me? Is that where we are?
Yeah.
Allow me to introduce you to my daughter, said the Countess with heightened color.
I have the pleasure of being already acquainted, if the Countess remembers me. Said Prince Andrew.
Passive-aggressively.
With a and his rudeness.
Mm.
And approaching Natasha, he held out his arm to grasp her waist before he had completed his invitation. He asked her to waltz. That tremulous expression on Natasha's face, prepared either for despair or rapture, suddenly brightened into a happy, grateful, childlike smile.
I have long been waiting for you, that frightened, happy little girl seemed to say by the smile that replaced the threatened tears as she raised her hand to Prince Andrew's shoulder. They were the second couple to enter the circle. Prince Andrew was one of the best dancers. Everyone is one of the best dancers, as it turns out.
Prince Andrew.
Okay, fine.
When are we practicing this?
When was rehearsal? Prince Andrew was one of the best dancers of his day, and Natasha danced exquisitely. Her little feet in their white satin dancing shoes did their work swiftly, lightly, and independently of herself, while her face beamed with ecstatic happiness. Her slender, bare arms and neck were not beautiful compared to Helena's. Her shoulders looked thin and her bosom undeveloped, but Helena seemed, as it were, hardened by a varnish left by thousands of looks that had... This is horrible. This may be one of my least favorite sentences.
Okay.
Hardened by a varnish left by the thousands of looks that had scanned her person, while Natasha was like a girl exposed for the first time, who would have felt very much ashamed had she not been assured that this was absolutely necessary. That was a devastating couple of sentences.
Did you know someone's eyes can violate you?
Can actually diminish you.
Yeah. Yeah, save that. Cover up.
She wasn't pretty because she had no boobies, but these boobies
were
too boobed. They had
been
been
noticed for their boobs.
Okay. And she should have been ashamed, but she was reassured that this was necessary. It's disgusting. Okay.
It's necessary that everyone admire your small boobs.
So I shouldn't feel ashamed? Because those are my two options.
Get used to it.
Oh my god. Okay.
But get married before it taints you. Or, no, she's married.
She's not married.
You're doomed.
Which one?
You can't win.
Both of them?
No,
Everyone?
Yeah. Just be looked at, but know that by being looked at, it'll diminish you. Prince Andrew liked dancing.
Did he?
Wishing to escape as quick. Apparently. Who knew? I did not take him for a dancer.
Neither did I.
And wishing to escape as quickly as possible from the political and clever talk which everyone addressed to him, wishing also to break up the circle of restraint he disliked, caused by the emperor's presence, he danced, and had chosen Natasha because Pierre pointed her out to him, and because she was the first pretty girl who caught his eye. But scarcely had he embraced that slender, supple figure and felt her stirring so close to him and smiling so near him, than the wine of her charm rose to his head, and he felt himself revived and rejuvenated when, after leaving her, he stood breathing deeply and watching the other dancers.
I'm grossed out somehow.
He's 35 or something?
He's ancient.
She's 16.
And using words like supple and stuff just does not help. It's oh, okay. Okay.
One more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chapter 17. After Prince Andrew, Boris came up to ask Natasha for a dance, and then the aide-de-camp who had opened the ball, and several other young men, so that, flushed and happy and passing on her superfluous partners to Sonia, she did not cease dancing all the evening. She noticed and saw nothing of what occupied everyone else. Not only did she fail to notice that the emperor talked a long time with the French ambassador, and how particularly gracious he was to a certain lady, or that Prince so-and-so did and said this and that, and that Helena had great success and was honored by the special attention. See, why are we? It went so-and-so.
It's just so-and-so and that so-and-so and this so-and-so we just met.
I'm glad we're catching up on all of this. But she did not even see the emperor and only noticed that he had gone because the ball became livelier after his departure. For one of the merry cotillions before supper, Prince Andrew was again her partner. He reminded her of their first encounter in the Otradno Avenue and how she had been unable to sleep that moonlight night, and told her how he had involuntarily overheard her. Natasha blushed at that recollection and tried to excuse herself as if there had been something to be ashamed of. I'm sure there was, in what Prince Andrew had overheard.
Like all men who have grown up in society, Prince Andrew liked meeting someone there not at the conventional society stamp. And such was Natasha, with her surprise, her delight, her shyness, and even her mistakes in speaking French. With her, he behaved with special care and tenderness, sitting beside her and talking the simplest and most unimportant matters.
Condescending.
He admired her shy grace. In the middle of the cotillion, having completed one of the figures, Natasha, still out of breath, was returning to her seat when another dancer chose her. She was tired and panting, and evidently thought of declining, but immediately put her hand gaily on the man's shoulder, smiling at Prince Andrew.
I'd be glad to sit beside you and rest. I'm tired, but you see how they keep asking me, and I'm glad of it. I'm happy, and I love everybody, and you and I understand it all. And much, much more was said in her smile. When her partner left her, comma, Natasha ran across the room to choose two ladies for the figure.
If she goes to her cousin first and then to another lady, she will be my wife.
What?
Said Prince Andrew to himself, quite to his own surprise, as he watched her. She did go first to her cousin.
What rubbish sometimes enters one's head, thought Prince Andrew. But what with separate videos regardless?
Like 15 videos. At least.
Oh my gosh.
Keeps getting in and out. I'm gonna fix this.
I believe you.
I will resolve this.
I believe you.
Okay.
You're a indubitable millennial.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
That means, like, not only are you already skilled with shit like this, but you're also like, I will get this. So you're unstoppable.
Yes. I'm all for millennials.
Yeah, man. Ooh, where are we? Oh, yeah. Such as she are rare here. Yeah, she's going to be married pretty soon, said Andrew. He thought, as Natasha, readjusting a rose that was slipping on her bodice, settled herself beside him.
When the cotillion was over, the old count in his blue coat came up to the dancers. He invited Prince Andrew to come and see them and asked his daughter whether she was enjoying herself. Natasha did not answer at once, but only looked up with a smile that said reproachfully, "How can you ask such a question?"
I have never enjoyed myself so much before, she said, and Prince Andrew noticed how her thin arms rose quickly as if to embrace her father and instantly dropped again. Natasha was happier than she had ever been in her life. She was at that height of bliss when one becomes completely kind and good and does not believe in the possibility of evil, unhappiness, or sorrow. See where we're going with this?
Mm-hmm. At that ball, Pierre for the first time felt humiliated by the position his wife occupied in court circles. He was gloomy and absent-minded. A deep furrow ran across his forehead, and standing by a window he stared over his spectacles, seeing no one.
On her way to supper, Natasha passed him.
Pierre's gloomy, unhappy look struck her. She stopped in front of him. She wished to help him, to bestow on him the superabundance of her own happiness.
How delightful it is, Count, said she, isn't it?
Pierre smiled absent-mindedly, evidently not grasping what she said.
Yes, I am very glad, he said.
How can people be dissatisfied with anything, thought Natasha, especially such a capital fellow as Bezhukov? In Natasha's eyes, all the people at the ball alike were good, kind, and splendid people, loving one another, none of them capable of injuring another, and so they ought all to be happy.
It's only upward from here, Natasha.
Yeah, life's gonna be great for you. Promise.
To infinity!
Maybe she'll be okay. Who knows? I'm usually savvy.
I'm just trying to cover my emotional bases.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's going to be upsetting.
It probably would. Pretty sure they all die.
Really?
Someone said that to me. And I was like, do not tell me that.
Which
And
someone?
I'm telling everyone. I don't remember. I think someone commented that. Then maybe they live. Someone's got to live to tell the tale.
Yeah. Oh. Just trying to think on my door.
What else would it be?
Just right. That's where it was this whole time.
Yeah, okay. Let's end there. And hopefully, I'm really sorry for all the glitches.
It's going to be so fixed.
It's going to be so fixed by tomorrow's.
By tomorrow. And we're going to have like a
Oh,
map. There's going to be a live stream on Instagram. Tomorrow's a big day.
Yeah, it really is. Are you excited? Tell us your friends. Okay, and hit subscribe. Thank you guys.
Hit subscribe! By the way, I don't think we've ever mentioned this, but this is Janessa. Nitya.
I love how we just like didn't bother with that.
Literally have not for 2 weeks even noticed
Right.
that we haven't said anything.
Right. Hi, welcome to our channel. Right, we didn't do that.
Nothing.
Ugh, negligent.
I think now is a good time for it, now that we're in book 7.
Yeah, okay. Nice. Like at the end of the video.
Yeah. It's like,
make merch
first
for us.
design the merch, then make it, then buy it. No, then sell it and buy it then.
Maybe we should sell merchandise before it comes out. Just to really like
How are we
live
gonna do
into the
that?
future you want to be in.
How are we going to do that?
We'll just like pre-sell. Like, trust us, it'll be good.
I mean, it's going to be good. There's no doubt there.
It's gonna be good.
So we're at P.O. Box.
Oh my god, I just got the best idea. Okay, get this? Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. I almost don't want to say it. So we're gonna do like an emperor's clothes thing. Got it? And we'll call it Invisible.
I'm dead. I've died. It's killed me.
Are you invisible?
Whoa!
Okay, that's my idea.
Yeah. I can't. There's no, we should just stop talking
Yeah, okay.
forever
What's in there?
after that. You know what's weird? Those things, what do you call them? Tail claps?
Clappers.
No, the
Yeah, the action thing?
tail slate.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Tail slate?
I should know this.
When they're like, we'll do it at the end, which I'm always like, how can you decide?
Oh, got it.
How can you decide whether to, like, oh, we'll just do it at the, doesn't that set off the whole organizational thing of the slate? Tail sticks. Thank you.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why?
Because it's a labeling system to like figure out where stuff is.
Yeah, so
What
instead
you're
they can
looking
just
at.
go to the end of it.
But that kind of like fucks up the whole, because you're still continuing, you're still going to run tape then after that.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires the person to be like, oh, there wasn't a slate at the front. Maybe it's at the back.
Yeah.
And then they have to go back to, I mean, I guess editors have to do a lot of stuff. It just seems like a weird system.
I would think though, if you don't see the beginning,
What are you looking at?
and so you go, and then you know trophy.
Okay.
That's my hypothesis. Okay.
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 Yay.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.